You know, we've gotten pretty used to AI that can chat with us, but what if an AI could do more than just talk? What if it could actually think and then act on those thoughts to solve problems in the real world? Well, today we're diving into a powerful framework that does exactly that. It's called ReAct, and it's a total game changer.
All right, so here's the game plan. First, we'll get into the big idea behind AI that can think and act. Then we'll break down exactly how ReAct works using a super simple analogy. From there, we'll look at the core feedback loop that makes it all possible, talk about why this is such a big deal, and finally, stack it up against another popular method called function calling.
So, let's set the stage a bit. For the longest time, when we thought of generative AI, we pictured chatbots, right? But the ReAct paradigm represents this massive shift. We're moving away from AI that just talks and toward AI that can actually get things done. And that really is the question at the heart of all this. I mean, instead of an AI that's stuck inside a chat window, what if it could actually reach out and interact with the world? What if it could use tools, search for information and change its mind based on what it finds? That's exactly where this new way of thinking begins.
This brings us to the official definition of a ReAct agent. It's all about combining two key things: reasoning and acting. The reasoning part is pretty cool. It uses a technique called chain of thought, which is basically the AI thinking out loud, breaking down a problem step by step. And the acting part? That's its ability to use external tools, like calling a search engine or using a specific piece of software through an API. It's putting those two together that creates something really special.
And you know what's wild? This idea is super recent. The big paper that introduced it only came out in early 2023. Not long after, another approach called function calling came on the scene. But fast forward to today, and ReAct is already a cornerstone for building these really complex AI apps that can plan and execute tasks all by themselves.
Okay, so how does this whole thing actually work under the hood? Well, to really get a handle on it, let's start with a surprisingly simple analogy that we can all relate to. This quote really nails it. Think about your own internal monologue, right? That little voice in your head when you're trying to figure something out. You have a thought, you do something, you see what happens, and then that result shapes your next thought. ReAct is literally designed to copy that exact intuitive human process.
And this slide just makes it crystal clear with the perfect analogy: packing for a trip. It all starts with a thought. What's the weather going to be like? That thought leads to an action. You check the weather app. Then you make an observation. Whoa, it's going to be cold. That new piece of info sparks a new thought. Okay, what warm clothes do I even have? And the cycle just keeps going. The key thing here is its ability to adjust the plan based on new information. That's what makes it so incredibly dynamic.
That trip packing analogy, it perfectly sets us up for the more formal, technical process that sits right at the very heart of the ReAct framework.
It really all boils down to this incredibly simple yet powerful three-step loop. The AI has a thought, it takes an action, and then it makes an observation. That's it. It just repeats that cycle over and over again until the job is done. And this diagram shows you that loop in action. You give it a problem, which kicks the whole thing off. The agent generates a thought, uses a tool to perform an action, and then gets an observation back. Now, if that observation doesn't solve the whole problem, the loop just starts over, but this time it uses that new info to generate a smarter, more informed thought. It's this constant refinement that lets the agent work its way through really tough challenges. So let's break that down just one more time. The thought is basically the AI's inner monologue, where it's strategizing and planning its next move. The action is where it actually interacts with the outside world, using some kind of tool to get information. And the observation, this is the critical part, is where it looks at what it just learned and uses that to figure out what to think next. It's a beautiful, self-correcting system.
Okay, so now that we get how it works, let's talk about why this is such a massive leap forward for building AI agents. Why is this such a big deal?
Well, the ReAct framework brings four major benefits to the table, and they tackle some of the biggest headaches in AI right now.
First off, it's incredibly versatile. You can plug in all sorts of different tools and APIs without having to do any special, complicated training. It's also super adaptable. It learns as it goes, so if it hits a dead end, it can just adjust its plan. Now, this next one is huge: explainability. You can literally read the AI's thought process and see exactly how it got to its answer, which makes finding and fixing problems so much easier. And finally, accuracy. By forcing the AI to check its work against real-world data from its tools, ReAct makes it way less likely to just make stuff up, or what we call hallucinating. That makes these agents so much more trustworthy. But ReAct isn't the only game in town when it comes to building these agents. So let's compare it to another really popular method, function calling, to see what makes ReAct unique.
And it's really important to think about it like this. This isn't about which one is better overall. It's about picking the right tool for the right job.
This lays out the trade-offs perfectly. ReAct absolutely shines when a task is messy, complicated, or just plain unpredictable. Because it's literally thinking in plain text, it can pivot and adapt to pretty much anything. Function calling, on the other hand, is all about speed and efficiency for simple, predictable jobs. It forces the AI to output a very specific, structured command to call a tool directly. Here's a good way to think about it. ReAct is like giving a really clever person a multi-tool and a complex problem to solve. Function calling is like giving them a screwdriver for one specific screw. Both are useful, but for totally different situations.
And that kind of brings us to our final big question. When we give AI frameworks like ReAct the ability to not just reason, but to act and learn from the world around it, are we actually looking at the fundamental building blocks of truly autonomous AI? It's a pretty mind-blowing question to think about as this technology just keeps pushing forward.